Welcome back to episode 2 of the Late Breakers podcast. I'm Tebow, your host for today, and we are coming back off of the end of the Singapore Grand Prix. With me today, I've got Nash again. Nash, how you doing?
I am doing sensationally.
That's good. That's good. So,
How about
first,
you?
I'm good. That was a really good race. Really good. I freaking loved that race. I think it was the
It
best
was.
race of the season.
We'll get onto that a little bit later, but it was a race. The I will say this: the end of the race was a lot better than the middle part of the race because the first maybe 40 laps for me were really tedious. Everyone was too close together and not really racing. It was all tire management. It didn't feel like racing until a little later on in the race.
I do agree. I was watching alongside with the stream, and it was quite a boring race to have to be had. But the thing was, I think there was a lot of like speculation on what could possibly happen right now. We had Max Verstappen falling out in Q2, couldn't make it out of Q2 alongside Sergio Perez, and
Indeed.
he's had a host of different problems for himself. So it was an honest thing of, oh, we honestly don't know who the winner of this race could be. And I think the starting point of everything was one, the safety car, but two, the tire strategies that were played afterwards. So I think it was very fun after the first 40 or odd minutes of the race, because then you could see, and I mean that we didn't even have much banter between the drivers and the engineers. We had a few moments where George was asking his engineer, so how do we win this race, Carlos just telling his engineer, let me manage these tires. I do have more pace, but yeah, I still think overall the best race we've had, aside from possibly Silver. Was it Silverstone where it was one of the most exciting races that we did have, or it was
I
Austria?
believe.
One of the two.
I mean,
Absolutely.
we've had a lot of exciting races this season. I mean, uh, sometimes a lot less so when you consider Max Verstappen has been dominating quite significantly. That's maybe what made this race a little bit more exciting. We had new people fighting for a win, and Max wasn't particularly in sight because, I mean, the safety car caught Red Bull off guard, which we'll get onto. And there there were a lot of interesting things that happened during the race. I mean, man, I think the consistency in what Carlos Sainz was able to do over the whole weekend was actually what made it look so interesting from that perspective. I think Carlos had a fantastic race. He was a cerebral assassin, absolutely sensational. What he did with Lando, backing into Lando to give him DRS so George couldn't actually get the overtake on with DRS against Lando was absolute genius. I mean, like helping out his ex teammate, driving the way he did, saying that he had a second in hand, managing the Ferrari tires. You know, it was a really great race from him. So he managed it from the right perspective, did everything right. I think the best moment was when he started backing into Lando and his engineer came on the radio and said, "You're within 8 seconds of you're within zero 0.8 seconds of Lando," and he says, "Yes, I know. I'm doing it on purpose."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Damn, the engineers didn't even see that coming, man." That that's the type of strategic. He's a thinking driver. He's one of those drivers that's able to put a plan into action and make it happen. It's absolutely sensational. I thought his drive was honestly one of the best wins I've seen in a long time.
I do have to agree. I think if we're going down the order of all the drivers, First
Indeed, I was
position,
starting that procession right there.
right, is it Carlos absolutely, yeah, I think he killed it. This race was his. He showed in practice that he has absolute form, and that, you know, given the right opportunity, he will take it and he will hold on to that lead with everything he's got. Sure,
Yep.
Max wasn't in sight, but that was the beauty of what this race was. It's a thing to say. Max Verstappen's not a factor in this race. It is purely down to your driver ability between a Ferrari, a McLaren, and two Mercedes drivers. Right. I still think Ferrari and their strategy. Yo, I had a lot of questions because it was during the race. I even said, I'm like, I'm not sure what is Ferrari trying to do. It sounds like they've got a plan A and a potential plan B, and they stuck to their plan A. Obviously, I know Carlos is his own engineer. It was probably his idea and plan to stick to it, but within the race, it sounded like Ferrari wanted to do the two stopper. And for a moment, I was questioning. I'm like, do they have enough room? And the problem was that I had is Ferrari was saying, yes, the two stop is still possible if you keep backing the whole pack up to each other, which for me doesn't sound like a easy way to win the race because he's still going to have to try overtake. I mean, if he had to go and fight Max Verstappen for a position, Max is going to hold and fight that position and not make it easy for Carlos in the slightest. So, well done to Carlos. His genius strategy of realizing that, you know, he shouldn't run away from Lando and rather give Lando the DRS so that he can keep up and still fight. It was a full on five hit move. Like 100 IQ plus move straight from Carlos. And the fact that he saw what was going to happen and he just executed. The rest is history right now. Carlos just did and proved why his seat at potentially Audi is even more secured than what it is right now at Ferrari.
In all hon- excuse me. In all honesty, I think Ferrari are making a massive mistake if they're thinking about moving on from Carlos. Because at this point, what what they clearly showed during the race that backing Charles, it like asking him to be 3 seconds of Carlos Sainz is a lot. I mean, think about that for a second. They were basically sacrificing Carlos. I mean, Charles Leclerc to the Mercedes and or to the McLaren at that point because that was, oh man, it just seemed like such a non-Ferrari strategy because you didn't expect them to essentially penalize Charles Leclerc for not being able to keep pace with Carlos.
I'd have to agree, but before we get to Ferrari and Charles's plan, let's go for a look at
Sure.
the other man who's got a man of the moment. I hoped for him to win the race. Lando Norris is the driver in question. I honestly wished he had the tires or whatever it was to have the opportunity to beat and get ahead of Carlos, but McLaren used up their sets of tires. Mercedes came into the weekend knowing that they were going to attempt this type of a strategy, whether it was to gain more positions or in this case have a slight chance at a victory. I think it was still a phenomenal job from Lando to get here. I mean, he started fourth and he ends up second. No, sorry, no, he didn't start up fourth. But I believe if we come look at Lando here, Lando Norris started. No, that's just his finish. Lando started a further back. I believe he was maybe seventh position, and to get to where he was, I must say, to second place, it was beautiful. Albeit George did sacrifice the position to give it to Lando for his for for fresher tires, but I think Lando capitalized on everything that went, what I want to call, wrong around him, and just kept his nose clean ish, except for touching the wall that one time, but kept his nose relatively clean, and I think just drove a solid drive.
Yeah, Lando absolutely proved why he's the team lead at McLaren, because he's an absolute lightning bolt. I mean, he drove so consistently over that whole entire race, and when he kind of picked up what Carlos was putting down in terms of keeping him in DRS, he drove his ass off in order to make sure that he could keep the Mercedes behind him, be it that of George Russell or be it that of Lewis Hamilton. He drove like an absolute. He drove like he deserves to win a race. Generally, I'm really hoping that Lando can win a race soon, because he really deserves it. He's shown so much consistency. He's been on the podium several times this season. He's been one of the most consistent drivers, even when he had a terrible car at the beginning of the season. You know, I really am impressed with him. I really hope he stays at McLaren. I really hope he shows the rest of the consistency for the rest of the season going forward. I'd love to see a couple more podiums and for him to snatch a win. You never know. You never know. Sometimes accidents happen, you know. Sometimes people come together and Lando can come and pick up the pieces and win a race, or McLaren brings an upgrade and they look like an actual race winner. But we'll see. We'll see. Only time will tell.
I have to agree. Only time will tell. I think the days are numbered for when Lando will finally get his victory. I don't think it's going to be long until we see that from him. But on to
Yep.
P3. The man who I honestly didn't expect him to be in P3. I do think he did get lucky with some of the shenanigans that happened. Lewis Hamilton,
Which
you
we
know.
will get onto.
Um, I think still another driver who did a phenomenal job for the weekend. You know, put in the effort, put in the time, and overall, he managed to do a solid job. Even taking the fastest lap of the race for himself. I think it was a overall great drive from Lewis. If Lewis was not behind George, I think this is where I think what I think, right? When George failed the overtake on Lando, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Lewis was right behind George. I think
Yeah.
it should have been a almost a strategy call to them to say, okay, look, we've got limited amount of laps here to try get past Lando so we can get past Carlos, right?
Yeah.
I think Lewis, we know Lewis is the better driver of the two, and this is where I think a little bit of team play could have come into play. Give the team order to say, George, let Lewis through. Let him take a crack at Lando, and
Yeah.
then if Lewis fails, we'll. I'm not sure how much
Swap
Lewis
back.
would like that of swapping back
Yeah.
positions, and
Yeah.
I don't
That's the
think there's
thing.
a.
It's swapping back from a podium. I don't know how much Lewis, Mr. Seven-time world champion, would want to do that. So, but I don't know. I don't know. I think he kept his nose clean and he just drove a consistent race. And towards the end of the race, he was really quick. And you know, perhaps if he had a crack at Lando, he might have been able to get past, but I'm not too sure if he would have gotten past Carlos. I don't know. I don't know if he would have had enough tires to be able to do that, because at the end of the race, a lot of the drivers were talking about being in the wake of another, or the slipstream of another car, or within about what I think it's five tenths or so, you would actually do essentially 10 laps worth of damage to your tires, which makes overtaking a little difficult here. And the reality is the race should be a two-stopper, but
Hmm.
because it's a tire management race, the drivers have to drive within a certain range in order to make sure that they don't destroy their tires to make the strategy work. So it's less of a race, more of a procession at that point, which was a bit of the disappointing start to the race. But when we got to the end of it, Lewis kept his nose clean, did what he was supposed to do, came in for a clean pit stop when they double stacked, and at the end of the day, put it on the podium.
Yeah, no. I still think, my honest opinions, I think Lewis could have applied a little bit more pressure to Lando and Carlos. I think Lewis was the faster of the two drivers on the mediums. I think
Hmm.
he would, in that opportunity, the one, or in the two opportunities George had to overtake Lando, I think Lewis would have gotten past Lando in the first at the first chance. And from that point on, I think it would have been a thing where Carlos is forced to push as hard as he can to try to get away from Lewis, which then leaves Lando vulnerable now to George, meaning George gets onto the podium, and then Carlos eventually, I think, would have been overtaken by Lewis. Get overtaken by George, not too sure, but that's how I would have seen it. But going back to the tire management, Charles Leclerc. Whew,
Ah,
you can go for it. Charles Leclerc and his tire management.
I mean, Ferrari are notorious with their terrible tire management, although you wouldn't be able to say that after this weekend with Carlos Sainz. But that's mainly because of the type of race that it was. That aside, Charles started on the softs in order to get the jump on the start, and it feels like it was Ferrari's strategy in order to have Charles behind Sainz and create that buffer. Kept asking him to create a 3 second gap between him and Carlos, and that was rough, man. I think if you're Charles Leclerc right now, you're sitting there and you're questioning what's going on, man. Like Fred Vasseur is here, he's supposed to be my guy. I'm being sacrificed to Mercedes and McLaren, and like what's going on. The tire strategy is not working for him. There was a point where he came on the radio around the same time Mercedes came into the pits, and he wanted to also jump onto mediums. But they, even though they didn't have a new set, I think that would have potentially been beneficial, because what ended up happening is he almost got caught by Max Verstappen, and I think if he had some fresher tires, it would have elongated the gap, maybe even thrown him into ring, because when people are racing, people are dropping back, and that could have allowed Charles to get involved with the podium race.
I 100% agree with you there. Ferrari, from the start, I saw that it was happening, and they just left the driver out to drive. I mean, imagine you have a P1 and P2 before the pit stop phases, right?
Yep.
For me personally, I'm like, as a strategist, I'm going to want to fight to make sure both drivers stay on the podium.
How
Red
do we
Bull,
maximize the podiums?
exactly. Red Bull would do it. Mercedes would do it countless times. How would you manage to do this? I think Ferrari, I because one, the new strategists and all of the shuffling around at Ferrari is happening. They've never they the strategists have never been in a situation like that before. So it's like we're just gonna have to sacrifice one guy so we can get the victory. In which the strategy did work, right? Carlos did end up getting the victory, but that was more down to Carlos's genius than Ferrari's genius itself.
100%. It was all Carlos's cerebral tactics rather than Ferrari's ability to actually strategize anything. Because, I mean, case in point is when the engineer came on the radio and said, "Yo, you're within a second, you're in DRS of Lando," and it's like, "Yeah, no, I'm doing it on purpose."
Yeah,
It's like, damn, y'all couldn't even strategize that. I mean, like my dad and I was sitting there, and it's like we were actually discussing it play by play as it was happening, and roughly around it when it was happening, and you sit there and you're like, wow, we're sitting at home and we're like able to strategize better than the Ferrari guys sitting in the garage with all the data. So that says a lot, man.
it did. And for me, the weird part was actually Charles had some decent time management ability on the softs, albeit
It did.
everyone else weren't also pushing. Everyone in the play that everyone was doing tire management, right?
Yeah.
And he was on the softs, so he's at a disadvantage to the other drivers because the softs are gonna get worn out a lot faster.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
in that first stint, Shaw was doing quite a decent job at managing the tires at that point. I think when he switched over to his second stint, one, there was a mock-up of his pit stop, right? He got held up because of traffic in the pits, and it's unfortunate. That's something that just happens in racing, where especially when the field is close to each other, and you finally go for your
Indeed.
pits. Um,
Indeed.
Ferrari didn't want to rather risk a unsafe release, which I think was a good play for them. Sure, it sacrificed Charles a lot of time on track, but it didn't mean that he got a 5 second time penalty. If we see right now, if they kept that strategy and let him out, Max would have been in P4 right now instead of P5.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was good. Even if Charles had a worn set of mediums, I think it was still the play to let him pit and switch over to a fresher set of tires, because he could have kept a lot more pressure onto Mercedes, not have to worry about Max Verstappen behind him. And even if he couldn't catch up to the Mercedes, he could at least have a quiet Sunday drive in fourth and bring home some solid points. Regardless, I think he did bring some solid points with everything that went wrong for him this weekend, being sacrificed as well as the tires.
Yep,
So,
that debrief is going to be very interesting.
I'd love to have like a Netflix be in all the drivers' debriefs and just give us audio of all driver debriefs, including all the teams. Like, yo,
No, you know what? I don't want Netflix to do it. They're going to dramatize it a little too much. What I want to do is the FIA must just record it and post it. That's what I would love. Raw, unedited.
it would be actually phenomenal. Even if they added onto the
It really
F1
would.
subscription thing, it would be perfect just
Oh
to
no,
hear.
that's something worth paying for, man. That is
It,
something worth paying for.
it definitely is. Okay.
Speaking of speaking of paying for, someone that paid for his sins this weekend was Max Verstappen.
Definitely. Max had a horrible weekend. Let's not even beat around the bush. Every Max Verstappen hater is probably having a whole lot of fun
Yep,
because
but by Max's standards, it was a absolute shit show. It really was terrible. I mean, he had a really poor qualifying. He had a really interesting race, though. I mean, he really did show a lot of consistency when it came to the actual race. I mean, the strategy phase didn't really favor them too awesomely, but I really do like what they showed in terms of what Max showed in terms of his ability to fight through the pack and actually get some decent points. And for Max Verstappen's perspective, get some damn damage limitation.
a, a damage limitation was, I think, the name of the game for him. We've heard the whole weekend round. He's had problems with the upshifts, downshifts at the with the car. Even in the simulator, that's the funny part. With the exact setup that he had and brought for qualifying, there was many problems he had with that absolute setup. And it was funny to see. I mean, not gonna lie, Max Verstappen he was too dominant. We needed a little bit of a moment where enough Verstappening. Let's have a nice Carlando moment here. But I think it was this was actually one of the times where Red Bull's strategy, I want to say, played out poorly, but at the same time, it was more of a damage limitation strategy than anything else. One
Yeah, I
thing,
think the safety car came out at just the wrong time for them.
exactly.
I mean, Christian Horner also said it. It was what they needed. They needed the safety car to come out either early or they needed it to come out a little later so that it would have played into their strategy. And in all honesty, I expected an accident to happen around the 20th lap because that's when people get lulled into a sense of security and people make mistakes.
Yeah, especially with everyone being up close to each other. I said about lap 35 was my number. I said there's going to be some
Yeah.
shenanigans. It's going to happen by lap 35, and we'll see something. I agree.
Yep.
Safety car messed the whole Red Bull strategy up. Max almost got in front of Carlos. It was absolutely close. But if you just go back and look at it, even if Max was up in front of Carlos and he got the fresh air, Carlos's tires, he had so much more grip. than
So much more pace. So much more
so
pace.
much more pace. I mean, a lot of the times you saw when George overtook Max, it was
Yeah.
not even a competition, right? He George put the foot down and he left. Max was fair enough. He's still in his rocket ship. The VTEC kicked in, and he was competing. He was competing, but ultimately ended
Yeah.
up losing out because he can't push as hard because there's no tires left. And
Yeah, but other than that, they didn't seem to have the corners sorted out. Like there's something about the balance that just seemed off. Usually, when you see a Red Bull go around the circuit, they look like they're on rails. They look like they're magnetized to the road and they're just like gliding through corners. But
mm,
this weekend, they really didn't look like that. They really had a what seemed like a janky sort of feel. It didn't. I mean, Max had been complaining about balance the whole entire weekend, and watching the car did look like there was something that looked weird about it. Not the same flowing car that we're used to seeing, especially considering the designer of the car. I'm gonna not say his name because
whew,
just now, bad things happen. Don't say it out loud.
no, no, definitely. Another thing I want to bring up before we go on to the next driver is this was one of the very few moments where you actually saw Max was defeated in terms of racing against other drivers, right? When George came up to fight Max for the position,
Hmm.
it was almost like Max just moved over. He didn't even like usually if Max is in a lower position, he's gonna fight you to the end for that position.
Mm.
And it was almost just like, oh, yeah, no, George is just gonna. I'll let him have a walk in the park to go past.
Well, I think it was more the fact that he didn't have enough grip in order to fight George like properly, so it wasn't worth it at the time. Rather than it's like I'm not gonna fight him because I can't. It's more if I fight him, that might be worse.
Yeah. So on to the next drive, the Gasly, right? Gasly, I honestly think he had a very quiet race. He
He did.
was, it was quiet except for the after stage, right? Fernando Alonso kept trying to get past Sergio Perez, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it was a baffling thing for me. We'll come to Fernando's problems that he's had with this race, but getting past Sergio Perez, he tried once, failed. Pierre Gasly then overtook him. Like there was a whole debacle of all three of them were fighting
Yeah,
for one
yeah,
for the same position, and
yeah.
Gasly just managed to, I want to say, finesse all two of both of them for the
Both of them.
position,
Yeah,
and then just drives away with what I would like to call a relatively clean move from Gasly. And I mean,
very clean, very, very, very
calculated.
Gasly. In all honesty,
It,
very, very Gasly. Um, I think what's interesting is the contrast of what's happening with Alpine. I mean, let's just a little overview of what's going on at that camp because up now Safna is out, and I didn't realize this until Sunday. My dad actually explained it to me, but he was explaining that the hires that Up Now had made in order um, to implement his turnaround strategy, those guys are still on their leave because remember, if you work for a different team, you have to take 6 months off before you're able to join and work for another team. So these guys haven't actually joined Alpine yet, but he's out. So that's what's a little shocking there. We're seeing reliability issues still plaguing them with Esteban Ocon dropping out of the race. We're, but then Pierre Gasly actually keeping a clean race, being consistent, making the overtakes when he needed to, and then just driving as fast as he could away from whatever action was going to continue happening behind him. That was a really good drive from Pierre. Showed a lot of race pedigree, a lot of consistency in his actual drive. So it was impressive for him. It was good for Alpine, but they're
yeah,
still, I think, on shaky ground.
I think one of the things that I like with Pierre, right, is in random moments like these, like this specifically, right, the pressure is on. Alpine's a sinking boat at this point, and what does Pierre do? It's almost like he's like, dude, my career is technically on the line. Yeah, I need to outperform or at least perform to the highest of my ability. And here he comes around showing that he can still perform. I mean, that overtake alone was phenomenal move from Pierre. He kept himself clean throughout the whole race, and the pressure was on for Gasly to gain as much points. I mean, his teammate wasn't even in the points at all, so he's the only point scoring Alpine, and this just solidifies why he makes at least a statement to say, I still deserve to be in F1 because I am a top tier driver. Maybe not, I wouldn't put him close to the higher levels of the Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton's, and Fernando Alonso's, but he is still a Grand Prix winner, and I mean, it takes a bit of luck and a lot of skill to get to be winning a Grand Prix. So overall, it was a good drive from Pierre Gasly. But someone who's shown that he doesn't need any form of luck at all seems to be the man Oscar freaking Piastri. I honestly, this guy, rookie, first time at the track, doesn't have a great qualifying because Lance Stroll crashes out in Q1, so it means he's knocked out and starts in the lower positions of P4. I think it was P15, and
he drags it to P8.
P7. He not P8.
P7. My apologies. P7. P7.
He managed to get past Sergio Perez in the last few laps to gain even more points. And I mean, what more would you want out of a rookie right now, right? You've built a car that, I mean, the other driver, he's putting the car into P2 almost, I want to say consecutively, but multiple times he's managed to get the car onto the podium and into second position, right? And your rookie driver is out here pulling up and saying, yeah, no, I can still secure some good points for the team. And I honestly wonder, I think Oscar, if he managed to complete his lap before Lance crashed out, I think Oscar could have easily been sitting right now in P5 with that, which would have been an even more phenomenal finish for the rookie driver around a first-time track for him.
Indeed. I think he's had an absolutely sensational race. I mean, he showed tremendous consistency. I mean, the thing that's amazing is, as you've said, it was his first time around the track. He had a tough qualifying because he got knocked out, but then on race day when the lights were on, he absolutely shone. It was beautiful. I mean, he was really consistent, you know, lucky in the pit stop phases, showed a lot of consistency, showed great race pace, and then brought it home in P7. So I'm really proud of that. As a McLaren fan, it's really exciting to have two great drivers in your team. It's unfortunate he wasn't able to get a clean run in Q1, but as we know, there's Lance Stroll. So
yeah,
this is F1. You know, sometimes people crash out and it happens.
It really does happen. And I mean, for me, I think McLaren, this last half of the season have proved why taking Oscar Piastri and doing that whole cutting Danny from the team, putting Oscar in, and just letting the man perform, put him in a good car, and let him drive. It was a phenomenal performance. I have to give it to him. He hats off to the man. Someone I can't take my hat off for. Sergio Perez. P8 finish this race. In this race, I honestly thought this could be a moment for Sergio. It's a street track. We know he's really good at street tracks. He's been a monster. Two out of the other 4 or 5 street tracks we've been to, 2 of them he's won the race for, right? He was before Sunday, he was the only other driver to win a race this season, right? And then he had his little slump. Now he's got and then fails to make it out of Q2 here at Singapore, where I honestly thought he would have had some form of a setup for his car ready for Singapore to really bring the heat to everyone. Where Max falls down, maybe he can rise and really come to the table to say, I am the next Red Bull driver. But a disappointing start in this. While Max was also on the hard tires, both of them started on the hards. Max managed to gain a few positions at the start of the race.
Managed to get
Sergio,
himself into the points, actually.
exactly. Sergio sat at 13th for majority of the race. The only
Yeah.
time he actually gained more positions was when the pit stop phases came into play for himself and Max, and
Yep.
he could actually push on. But as time went on, his tires were gone, and he started falling back. I mean, he was sitting in sixth position, which is a pretty
Yeah.
good recovery drive for him from
Yeah.
13th to
Yeah.
6th. But then Pierre gets past him, Oscar gets past him. It's not something you'd want out of your number two driver. Where sure the tires and the car isn't the greatest at the moment, but to be losing positions like this, I don't feel where at least I think he had the chance to really do something phenomenal. His performance was a little bit lackluster for me.
It was a little underwhelming, but I think he also had he had a bit of damage limitation on his end. Finishing P8 isn't terrible, but it's not good either because, as we discussed a little earlier, Lewis Hamilton is now chasing that position. Lewis Hamilton wants P2 in the championship, and Sergio's in danger. I think he's in danger of losing it. I think there's a 20 on points between them, and that's
43 is the
43.
yes, 43
Okay,
points.
43. I mean, that's a if Lewis stays as consistent as he's been, and Checo keeps not finishing in the top five, I think that gap is going to diminish rather quickly, and Checo's in danger of finishing in P3, which is again a thing that Red Bull have been chasing their whole entire existence, is having a 1-2 in the constructors, in the driver standing. I mean,
Yeah, it really is a it's a hard ask. I still think he has the potential because Suzuka's up next,
look,
and
no disrespect to Checo. Checo's a great driver. I don't want to throw shade at him, but unfortunately, this season has been a bit of a slumper in a sense.
it has been, and I want him to pick up the pace. I think he
Me
honestly
too.
he has it in him, and he's shown it to us that he has the pace. It it just needs. I want that motivation, that fire back in him to really want him to get back up there. But someone who's got a even bigger fire than him, Liam Lawson, rookie,
Oh,
rookie. Let's put out the stat sheet. Rookie. Technically, he's like what, second race, third race.
yes, but I mean,
We
the
didn't want to
first race
call.
was,
First race was Hull.
I mean,
He raced in Hull.
it was the baptism of fire. But again, he drove consistently and he showed great drive. And then his second race, same thing. But today, oh man, I mean,
Not
dude,
one.
he has been in the sport for a split second and he's got more points than Logan Sargent.
Yeah, I was about to say, only done three races, not only
Three
scored
races.
three races, sorry, but in that time, not only has he scored not 1 point, but 2 points with a P9 finish at a street track that he's most likely never driven before,
Nope.
and in a AlphaTauri. Sure, I will admit the AlphaTauri did get upgrades. On top of that,
It did.
he's beating Sonoda right now in terms of. Although we know Sonoda's struggles that he's had,
Yep.
Sergio broke his car just shut down, and twice this car just said no, we don't want to perform. It's absolutely painful. But the thing is, where Yuki's been lacking, Liam has been showing everything. He's So the thing is now, Liam set almost a level. If Danny Rick is unable to come into the car and at least get a P9 again with this car, it's going to be an interesting thing. I think Liam might just end up getting that seat straight away. I mean, if we go and look at it, Liam's sitting ahead of Danny right now in the points. Although Danny did break his wrist and he was out before he really got a chance to kick things up since Nick de Vries left. It's 3 races to get in an AlphaTauri to get 2 points. That's another rookie sensation that I think somebody's gonna be looking at. Whether it's gonna be a Williams, AlphaTauri themselves, because I mean they have him under contract already.
They do.
So, I think he's
under contract with the Red Bull team, with Red Bull as a whole.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, look, in terms of performance, it's hard to even say that guy doesn't deserve a shot. I mean, he's really young. He's really quick. He's really quick, and he's really consistent. So I'm at a loss for words, because what do you do if you're AlphaTauri? Because AlphaTauri do want like a number 1 driver that can help them develop the car, and you want a Danny Ricciardo in the car because he's a really good driver. So having him in the car will be great, especially because next season the car's going to be closer aligned to the Red Bull. So having Danny in the car will be super beneficial to them. But I don't know, Yuki's falling into a few old habits where he's getting a little too agitated on radio, and Liam Lawson has just come in and smashed it. I mean, in interviews he's calm, on the radio he's calm. Like, I don't know what's up with the rookies, but like specifically Liam Lawson and Oscar Piastri. Maybe it's the fact that they're from Australia and New Zealand, and whatever's in the water over there,
they built different.
Has made those boys so calm. They're so calm on the mic, in interviews, in every situation. I'm honestly just so impressed. I'm so impressed.
Definitely, it is a great showing, and I think during silly season we're going to hear a lot about this man and his potential rise to F1 within the next year. The other driver who did a pretty good performance for himself, with no upgrades for the whole weekend. None. Zero. Right? Nothing. Kevin Magnussen. P10 finish. Gained a point for Haas. Did a pretty solid drive. Both him and his teammate Nico managed to get the car into Q3, which was beautiful. Not a single upgrade to those cars at all. Gets into the points. Ends up in P10. Pretty good drive from him, I have to say.
Pretty good drive, quiet race. Very. He did what he was supposed to do. He came out on Sunday, and he just drove the car home. It didn't seem like he had too much hard work to do. He stayed clean. His pit stop sequence is actually really good, so I have to applaud Haas on that. And yeah, the strategy played out really well for them. They kept really consistent. It seems as though those cars are a lot quicker than we expected. Maybe the upgrades to the racetrack on the last sector have made it significantly easier for their car to be quick there. So for them to come out with their finish, especially for K-Mag needed this, because Nico has been showing him flames the whole entire season.
No, definitely has been. One thing is, the Haas's they have stated they got a bit of an unpredictable car, as well as they've got extreme tire wear, and they don't even know where the tire wear is coming from. You know, they have this chassis and car, but they cannot figure out what the hell is wrong with the car. So there might be a bit of a reshuffle at Haas that needs to be done. But for Kevin to be able to do what he's done so far, really good job. Now, into the bottom half, from P11 down to P18 or 20. I think a lot of these drivers had a big unfortunate race, right? The second biggest, who I want to call loser for this race, was Alexander Albon. Alex got punted by Checo. You can go and look at the
Yeah.
clip. I think Checo was too hasty. He just wants to get past. But that is no place to be ramming into another driver. Like Alex said multiple times, he's had to take evasive maneuvers because Checo just kept dive bombing him left, right, and center. And the contact was the result of Alex saying, "Look, I'm not gonna do this every single lap, man. I'm here to race, and if you're not going to drive properly, we're gonna end up crashing together." And Alex ended up losing so many positions. I think he would have gotten a points finish at Singapore in a Williams, which, yeah, let me not even get started on how freaking good that would be. It's not for Alex, only for Alex's career, but morale for Williams to say, at a tough race like Singapore, if we get more experienced drivers into the team, right, we could start scoring a bit more points.
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate thing for Alex. I mean, he unfortunately, under no circumstances of his own, wasn't able to put the race together, and it's really tough because we really want to see Alex do well. He's one of the best drivers on the grid in my opinion, and just with a little bit more upgrades to the car, maybe a bit more development, and hopefully that car can actually deliver something that can propel Alex.
No, definitely. The other driver, Guan Yu Zhou, quiet race. Alpha didn't have much of a showing here at all.
Full 10-second gap between Guan Yu Zhou and Alex Albon, so they were quite a distance between each other. So lonely race. Didn't see much action. I think he was early to pit stop as well.
Yes,
which was weird.
He was the first driver.
Yeah, I think he pitted around lap 8. I don't know if there was some damage or something, but I don't know. Just really weird race from Alfa Romeo. I mean, they really didn't have a great weekend. Sunday wasn't great to them.
No, as well as for Nico Hulkenberg, not a great race finish. Teammate managing to score a point, and he ends up sitting at over 12 seconds behind his teammate, 14 seconds behind his teammate. Same car, no upgrades difference. Just overall had a poor performance, poor race pace. I think it was more. I think the car just didn't come alive to him to really push.
And considering the fact that he also started in the top 10, it's a little disappointing on that end, especially when you see your teammate finish within the points. So there's going to be a lot of discussion in the debriefs and figuring out what they can do with that team. I don't know if they're bringing upgrades to Suzuka, but most likely not.
Yeah, I think Haas have already fully dialed into 2024's car, and they're most likely not even going to bring a single upgrade to any other racetrack for the rest of the year. If they do, it's pretty good that they'd still try to look at it, but I think they have very limited resources in terms of developing the car, so they're going to just leave the car as is and try work on next year's car to get a better start and better positioning. The other driver, who I think in third place of the biggest loss for this race, was Logan Sargent. Crashed into the wall himself.
Yep.
Just
all by lonesome.
Lonesome. Nobody was fighting him. Just missed his breaking point. Albeit, I still want to give him the rookie card, but there are two other rookies who not only scored points, but managed to keep the car clean for the whole race.
Yep.
So comparing him to other rookies,
and they're both from down under.
Yeah. Um, I think Logan got confused with what's a kilometer when he saw the billboard and just ended up missing. He's that breaking point.
Oh man, I mean, look, Logan did the same thing that Stroll did in Monaco and just clipped the wall driving by himself at an absolute at an absolute rubbish time. In all honesty, he really did. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he's just it's tough. It's tough because Williams have Alex Albon and he's like fighting for points, and you've got Logan who's just there, you know, just costing you money essentially.
Yeah, just running around freely.
Yeah,
It's just broken front wing, man. I,
broken. I mean, really. I mean, it's here's the thing. We did expect it.
no,
We
def-
did. We did expect a. We expected a rookie to make a mistake, but the thing is that when he makes a mistake at that point, which changes the complexion of the race, which is something I expected. In all honesty, Logan Logan's going to struggle for the rest of the season. That's the unfortunate reality for him. He's going to have a really tough time for the rest of the season.
yeah. I mean, it's all tracks the rookies haven't seen yet, and I honestly think Suzuka might just become his worst track yet. Singapore, his crash wasn't too bad here in Singapore. Like, sure, he missed the braking marker and just put the front wing into the wall,
Yeah.
but the twisty nature of Suzuka, she's a very flowing track, and if you don't flow with her, I mean, you're just going to end up what I call going sideways. He's gonna meet Barry R, and that's that's gonna be the end of the session, whether that's a practice or in the race. Yeah, I hope he doesn't crash out, but it's unfortunate.
The unfortunate reality is that Formula One, every season lately, we've always had that one driver where you're like, I don't know why he's here. He's gonna crash. He's gonna spin. He's gonna something, you know. And this season we've got Logan Sargent, and he's that driver that he's gonna crash. He's gonna spin. He's gonna do something.
Definitely, he's the reliability factor that the teams have when they building their strategies.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
Especially on and especially on the tracks going forward now because he just doesn't know them.
yeah, it just is. The
Speaking of knowing tracks, unfortunate for Fernando Alonso because he is a race winner at this track and he finished P15,
it
and that's the last of the actual drivers that finished the race, and that has got to be an absolute stinger for Aston.
yeah it. I mean, even if you heard the radio call that he said, it's undrivable.
Yep.
Whatever they've managed to do, it's undrivable. And I thought this might have been the case for Aston Martin, right? I think
Yeah.
it might happen again next year, but I think the amount it's gonna happen is gonna become less. They're gonna start the year off strong again because they
Mm-hmm.
have the development time to build that first car. The upgrades they're gonna bring will sustain the car for a bit, right? And it's gonna then hit another point where either they've gone wrong with the development or they they went in the right path, but they're not bringing enough upgrades to keep up with whatever's happening in with the teams. And it just is a sad thing. I mean, we saw his teammate lose control of the car. That could be
Yeah.
part of one of the excuses on why he crashed out. The car is just that undrivable. And yeah, I mean,
Here's the thing: I'm not willing to give. I'm not willing to give Lando the benefit of the doubt. I really am. I'm really not. I've seen him crash too many times for me to say, you know what? Maybe it was the car this week. Nope, nope, no, no. I'm not willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, bro. Honestly.
that's perfectly fine. Fernando he knows what he wants out of the car, and
and
Aston
he
are being
couldn't
told.
get it.
Yeah, but he's at least telling Aston, I don't want this. Whatever you've done, wrong. We've gone in the wrong direction here. Now, on to what I would call the biggest talking point
Oh,
of this race, George Russell's crash. Damn. You know, we said it in the last episode, right? When we were rating the drivers. George would be higher up in the rating, in our ratings. But his crashes are too much. It's too much of a driver error. Sure, Lando Norris also hit the exact same wall,
but
but
Lando brought it home in P2.
yeah. And George just decided, no, I'm going to take more and more and more. But eventually, he learned where the stop was because his race was over.
Mm-hmm.
He stopped into the wall. And that just what was a beautiful points paying position for Mercedes
And a podium.
and a podium for himself. I mean, that would have propelled him above Charles Leclerc in the standings, right? Now
And
he's
on
sitting.
top of that, it would have been high points paying positions for both Mercedes, which means the gap between them and Ferrari and the constructors would have stayed a little bit larger.
Exactly that. And because of if Russell's gonna get more DNFs like this, for Mercedes are gonna come under fire from Ferrari in the constructors. I mean, if we just go back and look at it, the actual standings is that Ferrari are not that far behind. They're like about 20 points or so behind Mercedes, right? 20 odd points. That could easily be
Yeah.
Max Verstappen has another bad day. Carlos Sainz puts it in pole position, takes the pole home. And if Mercedes and George, or Lewis and George, don't get higher points finishing than fifth, and Charles is able to get higher than them, that gap's going to close down significantly fast. And I think George needs to get his act together a bit because the DNFs, if we just go and look at George alone,
Yep. He's had 3 DNFs this season, plus the P17 in the Netherlands when he had the apparent puncture. I mean, it's not good. I mean, here's the thing. He has had a really consistent season. Outside of those 4 incidents, his lowest points paying finish is P8, and he's been in the points every single time. And he's also managed to clinch a podium in there. But the reality is that he's just those DNFs are just not helpful, and they're not doing him any good.
And the only other time is where he got a extremely poor finish was Netherlands, right?
Indeed.
And that and if you think about where he started in Netherlands to finish P17, it was another poor performance from possibly himself and Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's honestly sad to see that this is what is
Yeah,
happening with him.
but the reality is that Lewis did manage to bring it home in P6. So we can't exactly say that Mercedes had a poor showing. I mean, Russell was up in the points paying positions before that apparent puncture, and ended up in P17.
Yeah, it just is an unfortunate time for George. I've,
Because I think he was in P5 because he was fighting Checo, and Checo
yeah,
finished P4 in that race.
yes.
I mean, all in all, disappointing from George, putting it in the wall yet again. You know, just the errors when he really doesn't need them is the problem there.
It really doesn't help him. And the one thing I hope is it doesn't destroy his motivation.
Yeah, I
Because
hope so too. I hope he comes back to Suzuka and puts it all together and chases down Charles and is able to actually close that gap, because I like George. I think he's a really great driver, and I think he's got a lot of great potential there.
he really has some potential for himself. It's just a few too many errors for a driver who is in Mercedes. You know, I
Agreed.
I just think that Valtteri Bottas. I don't even remember when he retired from the race.
Neither do I, to be honest with you. He had another quiet race. I mean, it's becoming the theme of Valtteri's season. Yet another quiet race.
Quiet race. You probably didn't even notice. Like I'll be real with you. When I saw Guan Yu Zhou's name, I was like, "Where's Valtteri?" I don't I don't remember hearing, seeing anything about Valtteri this weekend. And
Yep.
all it is retirement on lap 51. Quiet one. Nothing was really said about it. To be fair, for those last 10 laps of the race, it was a entertainment killer. Like everyone was dialed in on the top 4 fighting for that position, even
Mm-hmm.
top 5. Yeah, sorry, top 4 fighting for that pole position, right? It's no fault to his own, but Alpha has some reliability issues. Um, and it's evident here and it's evident in their cars, like I've seen too many Alfa Romeos broken down over. I don't know what could be causing Valtteri his pain. Yeah,
To know that that's an absolute fact. I mean, oh man, the Alfa Romeo always has to break down. It just always has to break down.
I mean, Jeremy Clarkson said it, in Top Gear.
Yep.
He'd never buy an Alfa Romeo. Your clutch is gone by the time you push it. You
Yep.
push the pedal in.
100%.
So, uh, to see Valtteri struggling like this, who knows? He could have. If it's a clutch failure from Valtteri, I would freaking laugh my ass off if it is a clutch failure from him. The other driver who just seems to not get any form of luck, Esteban Ocon, was having a good race.
He was having a good race. He made some really amazing overtakes. I mean, he should have he should have finished a lot closer to where Pierre finished. Probably even ahead of Pierre, and he showed such amazing drive craft. I mean, the racecraft there was amazing. I mean, the overtakes that he was able to pull off on Fernando, um, the overtakes that he pulled off later on in the pit stop phase, after the pit stop phases, he was absolutely driving the wheels off that car. And then Alpine does what Alpine have done over the past few races this season and just decides we're turning off now.
Power off, no power to the car, gone. And
I mean, you could hear it in his way because he was going so well. He was going so well. Genuinely, he was.
yeah,
I mean, Ocon's another driver that likes a street circuit, and he was driving really well this weekend. And unfortunately, Alpine's reliability has just let them down yet again. Yet again.
I mean, if you go look at Ocon just alone, right? He has one, two, three, four, five, six DNFs. One of them Australia. That was the two crashed into each other. The others engine failure.
Yep.
Some form of a failure relating to the car. I mean, we look at Hungary, we look at Italy. I mean, look at it. A back-to-back failure. Italy and Singapore. Back to back. It's almost
And on top of that, there was a Hungary and Britain back-to-back failure. I mean, come on. How many times are they going to get it wrong?
I mean, if you just look at it even further ahead, the other failure was it was close to being a back to back. It was Bahrain, he had a failure. Imagine starting the year off and you have a retirement immediately. That
Well, here's the thing: in Australia, they hit each other,
yeah.
but then Pierre Gasly also had a DNF in Britain and Hungary. So there is something wrong with that car.
Yeah. There's something fundamentally wrong. And I'm not sure if Alpine will be able to even fix it by next year.
I have no idea. Genuinely don't.
Ah, everyone's favorite Japanese man on the racetrack, Yuki Tsunoda. Where does the pain? Where does the pain stop? You know,
It doesn't seem like it will. It really doesn't.
it just hurts. I mean, because of all of these DNFs, did not starts, or at least, okay, it's only two of them, right? But to have it back
Yeah,
to back,
that's what's painful because when you're trying to get some consistency back, and at the start of the season he had a lot of consistency with like the two 11th places, the two 10th places, and then 11th place again over the first five races of the season. You're like, okay, cool, Yuki's having a great start to the season, and then after that you just see a massive drop off, like finishing in P15 in Monaco, finishing P12 in Spain, which is a decent finish, but in a place where you would think that the car would be able to perform a little better, specifically because everyone knows that track really well.
yeah,
So, and then you look, he hasn't been able to crack the top 15 until Belgium, and then right after that in the Netherlands he was P15, and then it did not start, did not finish, and his season seems to be going on like a really downward trend, and it's not fun to watch, especially considering how he started the season. We all love Yuki. Yuki's cool, man. Yuki's such a fun guy, but he is a little aggressive on the radio. But I think that's also something that we kind of enjoy too.
I think there is part of that charm for him. His aggression has come back a bit. We know he did start to calm down, but it's back. But I mean, I would I would kind of say I understand a little bit on why his aggressions come back, because, I mean, bro, to start the year off so nicely, and then the car overall gets worse and worse as the year goes on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a frustrating thing to see, especially when he had that absolute horrible. Because a lot of the time in the race, he's sitting at a great position, and to even get into the points or score some points. But then it's either a little bit of a strategy failure in terms of how the the tires end up working for him, and he just doesn't get to grips with the car, and
Yep.
he falls further and further back into the grid, where he becomes a very quiet race. It's a Sunday drive for him, and
Yep.
there's nothing more.
But
And
then you contrast that with what Liam Lawson has been able to do with the car, and that's when it becomes a little bit jading, because you look at the P13, the P11, and then the P9, and you go, that's kind of how Yuki started the season, except I mean, he's managed to put it in P9. That is impressive right there.
yeah, it in the same car. Obviously,
In
if
the
we got
same
to see
car, and Yuki's only managed to Yuki's got had the whole season, and he's only managed one more point than
Liam,
Olsen. And even then his highest points paying position was P10. So Liam's outperformed Yuki already.
by just positions alone. I
Yep.
I totally agree. And for me, the thing I was a bit annoyed with Yuki, right, was in this race, Shaw Perez rammed into him there, right? There wasn't enough space given between both of the drivers, and he got a bit of damage to the car. I still feel like Yuki could have been able to keep the car running and 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 just get to the pits maybe, or at least
I don't,
keep
I don't know. It
driving.
seemed like I don't know. I think the car cut off for a period, so I'm not too sure how viable him getting the car back to pits would have been. But it's unfortunate. But the race weekend is over, and we are going to his home Grand Prix next weekend,
Oh,
which is the beautiful Suzuka.
I truly hope he can have something in store for us. I hope maybe AlphaTauri can bring a nice, beautiful livery like Williams was able to do with the Gulf livery. Oh, the greatest livery, yeah, for everyone. Yeah, I honestly believe it's the greatest livery we have to this date. I love that
One of my
livery,
absolute favorites.
whether it's on the McLaren, the Williams. That color scheme and look of it is phenomenal. Okay, to round out the top all of the drivers, the man who couldn't even start the race, Lance Stroll, he crashed. I mean, that in qualifying.
Yep.
That's all. That's all I have to say. Glad he's okay from suffering that type of a crash. It was a hectic
I
crash.
mean, it was a big crash. It's a big crash. And apparently he's too sore to drive the car. I mean, I get it. Usually he crashes on Sunday, so he has a whole week to recover. So, you know.
Yeah, it's it is what it is here, right? He overdrove the car. I was even speaking to our resident race car driver, I am Speed, and he was like,
Mhm.
If you, it's just too much. He touched the curb, he got onto that curb, and the curb's going to throw you out. If you touch it, it sends you flying. And he overcorrected too much, and the car was like, "Oh, we're going right now." And got sent into the wall, and
Yep.
he became best friends with Barry R. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. He's been best friends with Barry R for a very long time. That's why they keep having meetings. He likes him so much, he just can't help but just go and say hi every time he sees him.
yeah, they go way back,
Way back, way back.
They're
Jeez, I
homeboys at
mean,
this point.
how many excuses are we? How many excuses can you keep making for that kid? I mean, really.
I honestly hoped when we saw that his contract wasn't signed,
Yeah.
and everyone is making jokes that he's gonna go start playing tennis. I was
Let's go
really
play tennis.
I, I
Let's go
had
play tennis.
I had hope. I had hope. I was like, yes, we potentially have another good driver coming into that Aston Martin seat. And then they're like, no, we're still signing him. And I'm just like,
And you sit there and you go, why, why, why,
why?
why, why,
Why?
why,
Why?
why, why?
That just ended up being what it is, and it's
This is where we live. We live in a world of pain, guys. To all the people listening right now, we just live in a world of pain.
we definitely do live in a world of pain. So, Danny Rick returns for Suzuka.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts? Do you think Danny's got it in him after that little crash? Suzuka's a bit of I would call a bit of a taxing racetrack to be on.
It is taxing, but it's a lot less taxing than Singapore. So if he's going to come back, this is where he needs to come back so he can still have a couple races to prove himself and to also adjust to driving really quickly on a racetrack. Um, yeah, he needs to come back. It's a technical track to come back to, and the fact that he broke his wrist and there's Suzuka S's and it's a lot of S's and a lot of turns and there's some hairpins in there. There's a lot of strain that he potentially might face. Hopefully he's okay. Hopefully the physio went well. But we also know that Lance Stroll went to the same doctor that Lance Stroll went to, and Lance's actually that's the wrong.
I think Lance is going back to that doctor, if anything.
Yeah, he should go back to that doctor and go demand a refund because clearly he can't drive. But he couldn't drive before, so what am I talking about anyway?
Yeah, that there's only so much a doctor could potentially do for him. So, do you think?
So hopefully,
Yeah,
hopefully Danny Rick hopefully Danny Rick can get it flowing. And in all honesty, he needs to beat his teammate. But what would be really nice is for Danny to put it in the points.
it definitely would be lovely for him to get it into the points, because to get beaten by a rookie right now, that's not gonna be a good look for him. Especially when it's a rookie that was just temporary there to replace him. You know,
Yep.
it it really is. It's gonna say whether he can get that seat back or not. You know, because
And the thing is, I bet you that rookie is a lot cheaper.
oh, a whole lot cheaper than what Danny is right now. And I think silly season is gonna cause a lot of drama.
We can only hope.
Yuki,
We can only hope.
yeah, silly season usually only starts the last 2 weeks. You know, it.
Well, for now we already know that the top three teams have their teams sorted out. Well, we've got McLaren are sorted, Ferrari are sorted, Porsche. Why am I saying?
Oh, where's the
Oh
Porsche?
man,
Where?
I don't know. I don't know. In my head, I was just like, yeah, Porsche needs to enter F1. We need Porsche. Yeah.
Bro, jump ship right now from every other team to Porsche right now.
Oh
Get
man.
me on
Oh
board.
man. Oh man. I mean, I don't know if I could jump from McLaren, but hey man, like there's some. I love Porsches, man. Gosh, I love them. Anyway, we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but McLaren's already got their contract sorted with their two drivers. Mercedes got their contract sorted with their two drivers. Red Bull's got their contract sorted, and so do Ferrari. So the other teams potentially. I mean, I think I
Williams?
think already have their contract sorted. Aston probably have their contract sorted.
So I can,
Unfortunately,
if you allow me to interject for you, I can tell you.
go ahead.
Alfa Romeo, contract sorted.
Mhm.
Alpha Tauri are one team that is up in the air still. There's still one seat
Okay.
available. Alpine have theirs sorted. Haas have sorted theirs. Ferrari, Aston Martin, McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, all sorted. Williams, there's one seat left in the Williams.
Okay. So we have two seats available, essentially.
Yes, two seats available.
Okay. I would you swap Yuki Tsunoda and Lawson?
Would I swap Yuki Tsunoda for Liam Lawson? If I would consider that a lot more, right? If Liam does Suzuka, right? No fault to Danny and this. I just want to see an additional sample size from from Liam against Yuki. I'm hoping that Yuki can have a weekend where he's not completely knocked out of the whole championship. If we go back to it, the only race we could really look at to compare the two is Netherlands, where Yuki got P15. I believe Liam got P13. Right?
Yep.
And I mean, that's already showing. Liam's
That's rule
beaten.
number one. The rule number one: beat your teammate.
So if we're just going based off of that, I
Yep.
already see Yuki's being replaced. Yes. I think come end of the season, Yuki's being moved into the reserve role for Red Bull. Liam gets the opportunity to drive alongside Danny Rick.
To be honest with you, that would be sensational.
It would be. That's why.
I think having Logan. I mean, not Logan. Liam
Liam.
learning from Danny will be super beneficial for him, and it'll add a little bit of iron sharpens iron. I think he's really quick, and I think that he'll push Danny as well, and I think that will be beneficial for the both of them and for the team.
Yeah, you have an experienced driver who can help you build the car up, as well as a rookie driver to learn the ropes and hopefully bring the points back in and compete with his teammate.
Indeed.
Would be lovely.
We do have a question from our resident racing driver. He dropped
Right.
a question and he asked, is it good for Formula One right now in terms of the fact that Red Bull weren't involved in the battle for the top positions, because it's turned into an argument for it being the best race of the season? So how do we fix the fact that Red Bull are still involved, but not them dominating as consistently as they have been this season?
Okay. So I think there's a lot to unpack there, right? There are multiple questions in there, first of all, right?
Mhm.
Is it good for Formula One that the Red Bulls weren't involved? I think that's a black and white answer in saying that no, it's not good for Formula One. I think the more teams they are fighting for pole position,
Mhm.
the better it is. Obviously, it is unrealistic that it will always be like that. It will be more or less three teams, but if we can have four teams end up fighting each other, that's pretty good. That's almost half the grid. fighting each
That's
other
very true.
for just for a P1 and podium points. Oh, it would be so. It's not beneficial to F1 if the Red Bulls are not racing, especially because they are extremely fast, and they've shown they've built the car up. The other part to the question is how do we fix the things so that Red Bulls are still involved in the racing that happened yesterday? One, the other teams need to honestly build a better car. That's that is
Mm-hmm.
the what I would say the fastest way to solve the issue is the other teams need to build a better car, right? Although Red Bull have the Godfather, so that's it's a tough ask for the other teams to go up against the Godfather, uh, especially with this. But I mean, the FIA are looking at making changes to the front wing and how the front wing elements and everything joins up together, purely to try and fight this type of problem, right? Because a big problem we've seen is flexi wings, right? Whether it's your rear wing, front wing, and the FIA want to try and almost stiffen that up and to say we want to cut out how much flexi wing you've got.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with the amount of downforce loads that are being generated, it's impossible to say the wings can't move, right?
Agreed.
It's impossible, but they want to bring those tolerances down a bit to say that look, your wing can't move that much, as well as
Yeah.
stop the team. So like Mercedes, they've created some vortices off of their front end plates,
Yeah. Yeah.
which obviously makes it worse for a trailing car to follow. And many other
Agreed.
teams are most likely going to follow in building a front wing like that, and they want to limit the outwash that comes from that, as well as the edges of the floor.
Mm.
So, so that one, it will kind of try and hurt what Red Bull has going for them to almost bring Red Bull's performance closer to the other teams. And I would hope that the other teams are able to adjust to it well enough to get to Red Bull's pace. And then it can be a beautiful racing thing where every single race we get to it and we're like, I don't know who's going to win. I think that is a beautiful thing that we could always want and hope for in F1 is that, oh, I don't know who's going to win the next race. Do you?
That's a very true fact. But as a long-time Formula One fan, I can tell you that Formula One is dominated by errors. Most Formula One, most of Formula One has been dominated by specific errors, teams, or drivers. So we could be in another era of dominance again.
No, definitely. Um, but I think that's one of the reasons why the FIA are trying to at least fight it, and bring that earlier than 2026 when the big regulations change, right?
Yes, yes.
They they are bringing the rules into play in 2025. You may ask, oh, but why not 2024? It's right around the
Mm.
corner, and you can shake up everything. All the teams have already been building their cars for one for 2024.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it's hard for you to now change up the rules when the teams have
Midway
already
through the development cycle already.
yeah, they've spent their ATR and wind tunnel hours to
Yeah.
build the next parts for the car, and now you're gonna tell them, yeah, no, rebuild all of it.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen. As well as
Yeah.
the
That's not gonna happen.
FIA, they still need to finalize everything behind the scenes about what is gonna go on. How how would they change whatever else? So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Do you have any other thoughts of your own?
No, I think you've summed it up rather perfectly. So I've got honestly nothing better to add.
All right, let's go on to one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
Williams. There's still a seat open at Williams. Who are you going to put in the Williams seat?
Oh man, who am I putting in the Williams suite? Well, based on availability, I'd like to put Mick in there to
Mm-hmm.
see how he does. I don't know who else would be available other than maybe um, mm, what's his name? Felipe Dragovic at Aston. So I would prefer to have Mick in there because Mercedes and Williams do have a partnership, and we would like to see Mick back in F1. At least I would. And he's also won the same amount as Dragovic, so I would like to see him back in F1 in a team that's maybe got a more
Robust.
yeah, more robust team setup and maybe operation, especially with the fact that James Vowles is now running the team. So that's a lot of there's a lot of potential there. Specifically, I mean, you've got Toto and James have a great relationship. I would assume that they can have a discussion about maybe putting Mick in that seat, which would be great, I think.
It definitely could be a great option for Williams. Um, my
Do you
only
have any options?
my only issue about bringing Mick back into the play, right, is that
Mm-hmm.
with James Vowles taking over at Williams and bringing on other key personnel, is
Mm-hmm.
that you'd kind of need a driver to help you develop the car. I'm not trying to say that Alex is not good at helping to
Mm-hmm.
develop the car. I just think you need a bit more of an experienced driver to help develop the car. So
Who would that experienced driver be?
in my ideal fantasy land,
Mm-hmm.
that driver is Sebastian Vettel.
Hmm.
He can come back. He's had some time away from the sport. We've heard him say recently, um, it happened with Fernando. He left and came back. It happened with Kimi. He left and came back to the sport. The sport just happens to have a way of bringing you back into it. And I think if Sebastian is rejuvenated and has a passion to come back into the sport again, I think Williams would be a freaking great option for him to come in and have another passion project baby. Aston Martin was technically that. And if he didn't retire, Sebastian would be in really possibly good points positions right now.
Potentially,
Potentially.
potentially. I mean, we have to be honest. I don't know. It's a little weird because you may be right in the fact that due to the fact that he stepped away for a little bit, that now he feels a little rejuvenated and wants to come back and actually do the thing again. Um, that could be really good for that could be really good for Williams, but I would rather prefer him to come back in the Audi or when
Ooh.
Audi comes in, because I think him and Carlos Sainz
Ooh.
might be the most amazing combination I've ever heard.
On paper, and just
On
names
paper,
alone.
sounds so
Oh,
good. It just sounds so good.
it is. It's a wet dream. It's just like,
Yes.
oh, okay, Carlos here and this. So let's play 2026 team team builder, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got the shakeup. Audi joins.
Mm-hmm.
Alfa Romeo's out, which means Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou are most likely out.
Yep.
We have Max, Lando, and I believe George's contracts 100% sealed, as well as Charles's contract would be sealed, right?
George and Lewis are both signed until 2025.
5, yes.
Yeah.
But
So, but I would assume that they'll re-sign as well.
I think George would be an easier and quicker re-sign than it would be for Lewis to re-sign.
Yeah, yeah. It depends on where Mercedes is at the time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because there is still the little rumor we say Charles could move to a Mercedes, which is it's odd when you consider that Fred Vasseur has moved to Ferrari, right? And you
Yeah.
don't Charles probably wouldn't want to leave Fred's side, but you never know. This is F1.
Well, I mean, after what happened this weekend, Charles might just be reevaluating his whole entire life path.
Oh, definitely, right? So, let's start at the bottom of the grid, right? Williams.
Yep.
Who you running in your Williams team? Ideal team.
My ideal team would be Mick and Albon.
Make an Albon. Albon
Mick
stays
and Albon.
in
Yeah,
the
Albon
Williams
stays.
in
Albon did build
2026.
a team around him. I mean, in all honesty, I think it would be nice for Albon to get a big move, but Albon is building that team around him right now.
Okay, okay. Albon make 2026.
Oh, hold on, 2026. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe,
for 2026.
no, I don't want to do that.
That,
No, I don't want to do that.
exactly.
I'm gonna make the executive call and put Albon in the Aston.
Okay, we're not doing Aston Martin yet. We're doing Williams specifically.
You're making this so difficult. Okay, why can't we start with A?
Yeah, because I'm working from backwards of the grid. In
Ah,
20, I don't know which year it was.
No, it's easier to start at the top of the top of the grid because it's easier to figure out who's in those teams.
Okay, so we can start in the opposite way.
Yes.
Red
Good
Bull,
job, well done.
Red Bull, Max Verstappen. Who's next to him?
2026, Max Verstappen, Danny Ricciardo.
2026, Max Danny. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I just want to grab something else here quickly. Let's go back to the tier list. Tier list F1. So, in the Red Bull, you've got Max Verstappen, and you got Danny Rick. Danny Rick's not in here. Damn it. Oh well. Okay, Max Verstappen, Danny Rick is there. Alright. Who else do you got? The next team would be Mercedes.
Mercedes, I've got George Russell and Lewis Hamilton because I don't think they're going to shake it up yet.
George Russell, Lewis Hamilton. Lovely.
Yep.
Right. We still got George and we still got Russell.
Yep.
Okay. Then, next team would be Ferrari.
Okay, bear with me. Okay, this is going to sound crazy. It's going to sound crazy. But it's going to either be Charles Leclerc and possibly Robert Schwartzman, or Charles Leclerc and possibly Oliver Bowman. Those are two rookies. Well, not rookies. Those are two drivers in F2. I don't believe Robert Schwartzman's in F2 anymore, but he used to be. He is a very good driver, really quick. He's Ferrari's reserve driver alongside, what's his name? Italian Jesus.
Antonio Giovinazzi.
There you go. I knew we'd get there.
Okay.
So I think that would be really fun. Oliver Bowman is so quick. He is so quick, man. He's so quick. And I've also not seen that kind of support for a Ferrari in a junior category as I've seen for Oliver Bowman. So if he the reality is that there's no potential seats open for next season unless Valtteri Bottas decides he's going to retire this season. And even then, I don't think he has enough Super Race license points. So he's quick enough that it's not a crazy thought to put him in the car. He's got an impressive enough drive, in my opinion, that him in the car would be fun.
Okay. Then it's the team you really wanted to build, Aston Martin. I know you had fun.
Okay. The reality is we're probably going to still have Lance Stroll in the team unless the kid decides he's going to retire and go play tennis. If he does, let's say he goes and plays tennis.
Right.
I think having Alex Albon in that team would be sensational. Especially the fact that they're going to be Honda powered, so they're going to be an in-house unit. It's going to be everything built for the team. He is the right driver, in my opinion.
He is the right driver.
Yeah,
Alex Albon.
Alex Albon.
Right?
And then the number two driver would be, I think Felipe Drugovich would be exciting to see.
Oh, so you're not even
Felipe,
allowing Alonso to team up with Albon in there.
I mean,
Okay.
in 2026,
2026.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we still have to go through 2024 and 2025, man. That's a long time.
Okay, okay, okay.
But my ideal solution would be obviously to have them together for one season at least, so that he can soak up as much knowledge as he possibly can before you get Dragovic into the seat. But I also want to see Felipe Dragovic. We need a Brazilian back on the grid, guys. We need it.
It would be phenomenal. Okay. McLaren.
Yeah, we already said. We
Very
already
set.
said. I don't need to discuss that.
Yes.
We've got Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. If that changes, I'm going to burn effigies of Zach Brown.
Oh, Zach, you have
I'm
to
going to
watch
fly
your
to the
back.
Zach, if you're listening, I'm going to fly to your house and ask you, "Donde?"
Hey, he's gonna fear. He's gonna fear for his life. Alpine. Alpine, the trouble child of F1 right now.
Man, the trouble child of F1. Okay, look, my ideal solution is in 2026 they're bought by Porsche.
Not gonna happen because that deal's already closed.
Oh, okay. Well, since that's dead in the water. I
Uh,
mean, hey, we've seen
oh,
administration happen. I'm just saying.
facts. Fair enough.
So,
It is
so,
possible.
so, so here's the thing. I think they've got a good thing going. I don't particularly want to disrupt what's going on there. I like Pierre Gasly. I like Ocon. So yeah. The sad thing is they've got Teo Porsche and Jack Doohan as their academy boys, and I really like Jack Doohan. I really like that kid.
Hmm.
But then also Teo Porsche is quick. The problem is that he's been in F2 for 3 seasons and still hasn't managed to win it. He's come close but hasn't won. So it's a little, you know, you and ah a lot.
When we're looking at it, yes.
Yeah. Whereas you've got two race winners in the team. So what do you do? Do you shake it up for some rookies, or do you keep your two race winners, who are both in their still mid-20s at current date, and by then what, 2 years on, they'll be in their prime still. I don't know if you want to get rid of two drivers at that caliber.
Nah, I also don't know if you would want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. It doesn't sound ideal
It
at
really
all.
doesn't.
Um, especially with the experience they have to go into two rookies, it makes it.
Absolutely. It just sounds bad. Even if you like, here's the thing. If you had to replace one of them, which one would you?
Ocon.
Do you replace the more established? You see, that's the thing. Do you replace the more established Ocon, or do you replace Gasly? In my opinion, you replace Ocon, because I would keep Gasly at all costs.
Yeah, I think Ocon. He's had some showings, but
But he's also had some
Gasly's.
shockers.
Yeah, Gasly is just. I want to say Gasly's
Especially even
him.
in the car.
Ga-
He is. Gasly is him. Gasly is him.
Especially within that team, Gasly is him compared
Within that team,
to.
he is him, dude. So I think having Gasly next to Teo Porsche, because Teo Porsche, I believe, is also French. No,
Mm,
wait. Teo Porsche is a he's is he
is
an
he?
Alpine boy? He's a Sauber boy.
He's a Sauber boy.
He's a Sauber boy. Okay, I'm making a mistake. Okay, so then it'd just be Jack Doohan. Jack Doohan is the main option. I like Jack. I like Jack. I think he's good. I like the way he talks. I like how calm he is. He's also from either New Zealand or Australia. He's calm, cool, collected, good in the car, handles pressure well. I think he's a good driver. I
But
really do.
but you are correct. Theo is a French driver, which if it is the
Say again?
Alpine,
Say again?
Theo is a French driver,
Yes, he is. Yes,
so
he is.
it can
I mean,
still
if he
fit
ends
there.
up in an if he ends up in the Alpine, that would be interesting. I just don't know how good he actually is. because he's had three cracks at the cherry, and even now, like if he doesn't win this season, it's gonna be very, very, very disappointing.
Yeah, it would be a disappointing end to the year for the Mans.
Yeah, yeah.
Williams is your next team to build up now.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, since Albon's gone, Mick Schumacher.
You put Mick in, okay.
I put Mick in, and oh man, this is hard. See, this is why I wanted to do Williams last, because it's like, okay, who do you put? Okay, ideally, um if Fernando is at Aston, then you put Dragovic in Williams,
Drogovic
and
and Williams. You put
you put you put two F2 champions against each other and see who comes out on top.
I think that spells recipe for disaster. That smells of Haas 2020. It
No. House 2020
yes.
was completely different. It was Mick Schumacher and a person that didn't deserve to be in F1 because daddy's money got him there.
I totally agree. But look who's sitting next to Fernando Alonso. Daddy's money's got him there. It is just
But daddy's money didn't get Dragovic there. Daddy's money didn't get Schumacher there. They got there on merit and talent. They're both F2 winners. Let them fight.
yes. I totally
Let
agree
them
that
fight.
they could.
Let them fight.
One obviously I do think the environment in Williams would be different to what it was at Haas, right? We've heard Mick's
Yeah,
comments about
I
Haas.
agree with that. I think it would be good for them, man. Let them fight. Come on, don't ruin my fun. Let them fight.
We'll see. The other thing I want to say is
Oh, we didn't do Audi. Audi.
that yeah, Audi's on the list. It's coming.
Okay.
Audi's on its way.
All right. Excuse my excitement.
I know you're excited. I already have your driver sitting there ready there for Audi. Um, Rookies next to each other. I think they need somebody with more experience next to them, right? It's a thing where whether it's like you put Drogovic with Perez in the Williams, or you put okay, that doesn't sound like a most ideal thing, but I'm just using Perez as an example because he's got the experience, right? If you want Mick in the sport and you want him to flourish, I think you need to put Mick alongside a well-established, experienced driver who's going to push him more. Putting him up
So
against
you're saying
Magnussen
Mick,
in
Mick
Haas was
versus
horrible.
no. So you're saying Mick versus Perez?
It, that was just off looking off of the people here. Yes, Mick
Yeah.
versus Perez, or alternatively, my homeboy can come back. Obviously, you'd argue with me on this, but it's put
Okay.
Mick in the Williams with
Uh huh.
Sebastian Vettel. It's here. It's a recipe for that. At least Mick will try and learn something. Maybe it's a little
Okay.
too ambitious.
Okay.
It could be
Okay.
too
Okay.
ambitious.
Okay. Okay. I think that'll be the ideal solution for both Mick and Seb. I think both of them would jump at the chance for that. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
like that. It's like racing with your uncle or your older brother. Like you want to do that. That'd be freaking cool. So I'm sure Mick would jump at that chance. I don't know if Seb has the option to go with Audi or go with Williams if he'd pick Williams. I would pick Audi.
everyone would pick Audi.
Everyone would pick Audi.
Everyone is going to pick Audi. Why would you not? Here's
Yeah.
why. Mercedes. It's not the Mercedes engine anymore, right?
No.
Mercedes's magic trick with
No.
the
No.
MGU
You,
with the MGUK is
you
gone.
mean no. You mean who were you talking about? Williams or were you talking about
I'm talking about Williams.
um
In the Williams car, it would still be
yeah.
the most likely be the Mercedes engine that's going to be there, right?
Indeed. Indeed.
But you can't guarantee that Mercedes are really going to land it. Because here's the thing, we've got the next German homies pulling up into the sport with an engine. Not to mention, Honda's also still back. Honda's out here providing an engine for
Aston.
Aston.
In
right?
2026, they've got a contract with Aston.
With Aston, right? So there's two German engines, right? Which
Yep.
German manufacturer is your favorite? That's what it comes down to. If it was Sebastian Vettel's choice, go with Audi.
Yeah.
Yeah, because here's the other thing: both teams are also German, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all
Well,
about
here's
your
the thing.
pairing.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I mean, we could tug at Sebastian's heartstrings. He does own Nigel Mansell's car, so he does own a Williams.
But
He
yeah,
loves the team. So there is something that you could do. You could probably twist his arm and say, "Yo, do you want to go build an Audi, or do you want to come and rebuild Williams to its greatness?" Imagine if you won your fifth world championship at Williams, man.
it's
James Vowles might be able to say sweet, sweet words to Sebastian Vettel and make him come, but I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
If it was me, I don't know if I'm going to sign with Williams. Williams has historically disappointed.
It is a bit of a thing, but let's move on to the next team. Uh, Before we get to your lovely uh, waiting moment, Haas.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion, keep the same set of drivers. It's working for them as is right now. And the last time they took on some rookies, uh, shit went south.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Magnussen, Hulkenberg, that's my say. Keep both of them, and that's all it is.
Oh, man. Ah, Haas, man. Okay. So I love what Haas represent, but the unfortunate reality is they don't operate the same way other F1 teams do, and they need to get that fixed. They need better communication, more communication. As Mick was saying, that there's like almost zero communication between driver and team, and that's crazy. So yeah, I think that might have been the thing that has made it so difficult for rookies to thrive at Haas, is the fact that they require the drivers to basically go out there and do it and fend for themselves, where you've got two drivers who are very capable of fending for themselves because they've had to do it for quite a bit, and they've raced and they have a lot of racing experience. So yes, I mean, it's not ideal in my opinion to have both Magnussen and Nico still in 2026, but I don't see any other options.
Not for Haas, at least. Not that's it's a pretty easy solution for them. If Gene Haas wants to even stay in the sport, I honestly think Gene should just sell Haas to
Porsche.
Porsche. Let's just get Porsche
So
on.
bring it here, bring it here.
Yeah,
We'll take it from them.
we're easily happy about it. But hey, we have to see what happens. But now, your dream team. Go.
Sebastian Vettel and Carlos Sainz.
In the team that is named Audi.
Dude, oh my lord.
2026.
Oh my lord. That'd be so cool. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, it did.
Carlos Sainz actually getting some experience from like a proper world champion driving a car that's going to be essentially built around him in the future. Oh man. It's everything you'd want. It's everything you'd want, man.
No, 100%. It really is everything you'd want and more. It, especially if he can keep form, bro.
Especially if you can keep form.
I think it's over. That team is going to it's going to flourish. They're gonna go places, and they're gonna enjoy that time to be there.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
And hopefully, it's fight for the championship. I want that 2026
Well,
season to be
well,
fire.
the main thing is a lot of title challenges come from manufacturers that build alongside the team. So you see McLaren when they were dominant with the Honda engines. Then you see McLaren when they were dominant with the Mercedes engines. Ferrari has been dominant with their in-house team. Red Bull were dominant when Red Bull had Renault as their own when Renault didn't have a team and Renault was only supplying Red Bull. then we also had their dominance when they had Honda as a supplier, and Honda didn't have another team. So there's a specific, it's like a code when you have a engine manufacturer and a team working together trying to build a championship winning car with a championship winning driver in it.
Yeah. It can be an absolute beautiful recipe or a recipe for disaster.
That
But
too. That too.
but this is what
I mean, because
2026 has.
we've also seen that the McLaren Honda partnership in the 2010s was, let's just say, more terrible than anything you could ever experience, and then they managed to Honda managed to turn it around into championships, and slowly after a partnership with Renault and then now Mercedes, McLaren are finding their way back.
Yeah, I have to agree. But that is at least the 2026 future things that we could possibly look at. But ladies and gentlemen, that will be the conclusion of this episode 2 of the Late Breakers podcast. If you have any ideas of other names you want to call the podcast or series things we should talk about, let us know. You can message us on Instagram at the late _breakers. We also stream on Twitch at the same handle, the late _breakers. Well, you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the usual socials, YouTube as well, where you'll find alongside our podcast, we have a little bit of video. So if you want to see some of the things we're talking about, you can definitely come have a look at our YouTube video. Run it in the background and just enjoy. But that's been it, Nash. It's good to have you on with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's good. And we'll see you guys. Well, we'll love and leave you guys. See you in the next one. Cheers.